Sup guys, today's video is gonna be about the new event, Royal Maids Part 3. As usual, I'm just gonna be giving my opinion on the ships, and won't be doing much reading of the skills. If you wanna read the data mine, then you can find it in the description. Anyway, let's get started. So first we've got Albion. She's Centaur's sister, and just like Centaur, she has good stats even by carrier standards, despite being a light carrier. Her loadout is very good against light and medium armored enemies, but having two fighters will definitely hurt her damage against heavy armor enemies. On top of her strong base stats, her skills are also very good. First, her aviation buff is pretty high, at 25%. Usually we see 10 or 15%, and it's pretty rare that we get 25%, especially on top of a barrage on airstrike. The barrage consists of bombs and parallel torps, so it's not going to be as good on bosses as it is on mobs, but the skill also comes with a permanent 10% damage taken increase debuff, which applies to all sources, and if you've used the Vanguard, then you know exactly how impactful that debuff is. Unlike Vanguards though, this debuff is targeted at one enemy, so it's going to be particularly useful in single enemy fights. She also has some defensive utility in her third skill, which is mostly going to be useful in chapter 14, but they're not that impactful overall. As a quick summary, she's good in mobs because of her high reload on top of big AoEs, and she's good in bosses because she just has a lot of damage overall from her stats as well as a very good debuff. Next up is Janus. She's Jervis's sister, but unlike Jervis, she's not particularly tanky. She does have a little bit of defensive support though, but overall she's a lot more damage oriented. She provides some buffs for her sister ships, so if you sortie her with Jervis, they'll enjoy some nice buffs from each other. She also has a solid barrage every 15 seconds that applies a pretty substantial debuff. The problem with the debuff though is that it's 15 seconds and doesn't really sync with torpedoes. So it's mostly just a nice bonus, as opposed to what it could have been if it was every 20 seconds instead. On top of that, she also has Jervis's very strong all-out assault, so her damage should be pretty solid. The only issue is that since she's a damage-oriented destroyer, her competition is a lot more fierce in comparison to Jervis, whose competition is other tanky destroyers with good anti-submarine, which is very rare. So you probably won't find any cases where she's the best choice for your fleet, but if you do choose to sortie her with Jervis, then she'll be far from a detriment to your fleet. Okay, I'm gonna skip over Royal Fortune and talk about her along with the new equipments, and briefly talk about Manchester instead. Her stats are not that great, and her skills don't make up for it, so she's just a ship that doesn't do a lot of damage and isn't particularly tanky either. Unfortunately, that's just how it goes for most purple ships. Finally, we've got Royal Fortune, who goes into the submarine fleet. Right off the bat, we can see that she applies a pretty substantial slow on entry, which you can time with your burst, so that's already going to be useful. And then her round shot, Ox, also gives submarine fleet ammo +1, which is very useful in chapter 14. In terms of her damage, the gun that she can use is about half of a Tash gun in DPS, and since she has two guns on each slot, you can pretty much think of it as just having two Tash guns. It's kind of hard to gauge her damage right now in comparison to other submarines, because I don't really know how long she can last in battle before she starts retreating, especially in difficult content where you want to call your submarines. So I'll have to test her before drawing any conclusions. But assuming that she stays in battle for at least 30 seconds, her damage should be very good, especially against light and medium armor enemies, since her weapon has a bias towards them. Okay, we've got a couple more Oxes here. Albion's exercise report unfortunately comes with aviation because the skill is a lot better on Vanguard ships. Because of how evasion rate works, the effect is better the closer the ship is to the evasion rate cap. So the ships that are gonna benefit the most from this are Javelin, Dido, Plymouth, and so on. On those ships, this should be better as a defensive option than even rudders and toolboxes. And then the J-Class crown is pretty self-explanatory. It's a very good Ox on J-Class destroyers. Overall, this is a pretty solid event. None of the SSRs are bad, and we've got a new ship type, and the designs are just absolutely impeccable. So, can't really complain much. My only complaint is that a ship that looks as good as Manchester could be a little bit stronger. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.